And occasionally we'd run into broken links. I'm sure everybody's at least encountered that once. We'd have a couple duplicate part numbers because prior to moving to our new system, like I imagine some people in the unmanaged environment have gone, we had to keep track of our own part numbers using an Excel file. I'm sure there's various methods that everybody's developed for that, but we found that to be kind of lacking for what we needed to do, especially whenever we were growing as an industry. So in about the course of 2 months with the help of Prolim and their team, we managed to take all those files, clean them up, and move them into a PLM, which is a larger, more manageable environment that does quite a few things for us as an industry. Since then, we've grown another 10,000 files, give or take, quite a few designs from there. We've yet to encounter any broken links at all, which fantastic, to say the least. And then no duplicate part numbers, as that's completely been solved by Teamcenter's automated part number generation program, which we have a couple of different part numbers that we handle underneath that keeps us from having any duplicates, and also allows us to continue to take up that count while keeping everything in a very manageable environment. So part of why we moved into Teamcenter was more than just these issues that we had run into. I mean, nobody likes to have their data lost, a rollback on something you've been working on for a week, dropping a file, even if it's only a couple hours. I can say that I've had that happen a few times, and I have no doubt everybody sitting in this room has too. I mean, there's no question of that. But part of what we tried to move into and what we're doing right now is the development going forward as a company using Teamcenter. So we're trying to tie Teamcenter into a lot of our other programs that exist outside of this CAD environment for a lot of users that aren't in the engineering group. People that we have to communicate on a day-to-day basis, and people that don't quite understand what it takes to put together whatever part they're selling to people outside of us. A big part of that we're moving towards is electrical 3D integration. So whenever you've worked in a shop and you've had to assemble your control panels and had to go through and read every single wire, ID every single wire, sit there and try and translate what you're going to 3D, or even if you're in the CAD environment, sitting there and drawing every wire on your draft, showing it in every view, trying to narrow it down so it makes the clearest possible view that you can get. We're trying to eliminate that in its entirety, which I'll move into the obsolescence there in a second. We are currently pairing those two environments, the solid edge 3D environment and the 2D environment, so that anytime that somebody would be working in this environment, or anytime we need to send this outside of our group, it's as simple as clicking that wire that somebody would have to sit there, read the number, find the number, go see what page it lands to, kind of try and translate what they're holding in their hands to a part number, blase, blase. They could just click that wire and immediately see the run, how engineering wants to see it routed throughout your control panel, how you want to see it tapped off of whatever you need to, whether it be bus, another electrical component, your power supply, and then you can immediately see that in the 3D and the 2D environment. And then vice versa, if you click a wire that, where does this go, you can immediately see electrically where and what it's doing. Which brings me to the assembly drawing obsolescence. So I imagine that a lot of companies still do this. We don't do individual part fabrication drawings anymore. We've stopped that in its entirety, save for very few critical fit components, and we send everything out as step files. We no longer have QA check to those drawings unless, again, it's a critical fit, which is, we'd say, 1 in 100 parts for us. And we completely moved to a 3D environment for that. And it's something that we are now, with Teamcenter, trying to obsolete the assembly drawings above them too. We run a pretty lean manufacturing team, and engineering team for that matter, where the amount of time that we can save and anything that we can cut down and anything that we can pare down, we're going to. Our plan right now is to move various machines up into the shop, whether it's a tablet, which we saw earlier they have the access to with some of the new Teamcenter options, or a full computer, so that our boys in the shop and the factory can quite literally assemble one-to-one from a 3D environment. And as drafting and as engineering, we no longer have to spend the countless man hours that it takes to build those assembly drawings. That also leads into our 3D, 2D integration, because if we can obsolete those, It will lower the need for control panel layouts possibly, and it will also narrow down to just needing the electrical next to your 3D environment. Which brings us to one other thing. Like most of you, we have an ERP that runs the majority of everything we do as a business. From our purchasing team to our selling, to our sales, to our customers, to our vendors. It's how we interact with everybody outside of our group. And there's a pretty decent amount of time spent in that environment, even just on the new release of a product. So say we finalize our design, we've been working on it for a couple months here. It doesn't seem like a lot of time, but over the next 3-4 days, all of those part numbers then need to be entered into that ERP system. All of those need to be put into a bill of materials. We need to make sure all that pulls properly. That then needs to push to our vendors, whoever they are. And then from there, while we're building, we then have to edit that for any as-built changes that need to be made. We'll need to obsolete, delete, remove, change parts of the bill of materials during the prototype phases. And this is all done now in 2 different environments. It's done both in our ERP system and it's done in our 3D assembly and, well, it would be 3 environments actually, because then now our 2D draft. We are working with Prolim right now, and there's been talks to completely get rid of the manual portion of doing that in our ERP system, which is Teamcenter should allow us to do. Our plan is to link them directly, so the PLM will then handle the obsolescence of any parts or any assemblies. It'll handle any changes we make in that 3D environment, and that will be pushed through to our ERP system, which should remove the need for anybody to do manual entry as far as any of those systems are concerned. Our big goal at MEPI, and something that we've been preaching to, is to lower the amount of steps between us, our manufacturers, our vendors, and our customers outside of us. And we've been doing that year by year as quickly as we can, but you run into obstacles. The most recent change from Insight to Teamcenter was a large leap that opened up a lot of avenues for development for us as a company. Does anybody have any questions about what we do?
Going paperless in
Yep.
your design, has there been consequences for that with most people
So-
working in the traditional venue?
We have run into some vendors that we can no longer have access to because they refuse to do anything with 3D environment. But we've often found that those same vendors are the ones that can cause issues with our tolerances that we would normally run into. One of our big vendors that we work with has found use of our 3D file to be the best route to go. And we very, very, very rarely ran into any tolerance issues. We've had 1 or 2 on actual bends for our sheet metal, but they're 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 compared to what we actually do overall.
So does the 3D file carry the revision history with it?
Yes, it does. We keep that. We keep that in Teamcenter. It keeps. So I don't know if you've worked in the Teamcenter environment at all. The actual revision history is kept per access too. So whenever anybody opens up that file to edit it at any time, it logs that edit first as its own set, and then after you've released it, it'll lock that revision. So then whenever you revise, you can also see all previous iterations of edits to the Teamcenter environment. So that's part of how the PLM has helped us quite a bit. We've been able to go back to any kind of revision that we need prior to whenever we released it, and if we don't need it at all, it locks in the vault and we don't have to touch it. So.
But you have to teach your vendors how to interpret the new methodology.
Not yet. That's where we've been working with some of our vendors. The big one that we use for the majority of our work has been, we've worked for them for a while, and we actually kind of started with them working in preference to 3D. We used to supply those fabrication part drawings, and they've been sent out to quote before, but now we just send step files.
And what impact has that made in cost savings?
Cost savings up front, none. In man hours, we're probably looking at a couple hundred minimum per release of any project. And I say minimum because some of our designs are small, which would be our maintenance bypass cabinets, and then like that megapod that you've seen took a couple of months of development. And if we had to do a piece part drawing for everything in that, we'd probably be looking at an additional month of time spent just finalizing that design.
But your assembly folks have to have pads, electronic access to it.
That's what we're moving to. Right now we do assembly drawings, but we don't do fabrication drawings. We are trying to obsolete those too. Yes, it would require that upfront cost of giving them access, But we already have computers in the shop because of our ERP system that they have to pull, so it shouldn't be too hard to make that, that move forward.
So ultimately, along that same line of thinking, what do you provide to the customer at the end of the day for their usage?
So
For spare parts, troubleshooting, that kind of thing.
So a lot of our discussions and troubleshooting, we have our drawings accessible on the site. If required, we can always do a first page bill of materials. Since that's pulled parametrically from everything in our data, it's not hard to do that. It takes about 10 minutes. But our ERP system keeps track of all of our individual components. So we could use the ERP system for anything that they may need, for anything they have an issue with. And then since Teamcenter pulls those numbers, we have a set searchable database of everything that they might need to change out. When it comes to anything they may need to do for maintenance further down the line, we have a lot of procedures written in our engineering group and a lot of manuals for what we have out in the field.
How long have you had cycle time?
Sorry, what was that?
How long have you had cycle time as your ERP system?
It was there prior to when I started. We might have a better answer from somebody else in our group. But as far as I know, that has been our ERP system since we've basically moved into being our own division.
Okay, question for James.
Yeah.
You mentioned you guys are on 2020 for the solid edge electrical.
Yes.
Are you guys utilizing the new layout module? Well, I guess you're not using the, in 2021, if you're not familiar, it came out with the new control panel layout module. Is that something you guys have investigated?
We have not, but we would be happy to look into it. I know that in the time that we worked with you on the solid edge electrical, which I actually wanted to mention that you talked about the component automated naming process. I imagine we were one of the customers that was the loudest to complain about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure we gave you some headaches on that. We're actually really excited first to work into that and then to see what other capabilities might be in solid edge electrical.
Okay, great.
Like I
Yeah.
said, we've only been in it for about a year now, so we're still trying to understand everything that we can do with it past what we've already identified.
Yeah. I'd be happy to share that layout concept.
Absolutely.
What, for your step files and lack of assembly drawings, what kind of, are you building in PMI into those step files or assembly files or creating exploded views for the shop floor?
So we actually, we use the assembly configurations in the model, and that is how we actually do our views on drawing sheets. So the thought was to eliminate the need to take those assembly drawing configurations to put them on the sheet and just use those, because our naming convention that we use is already kind of intuitive in terms of just clicking through your assembly configurations. So the idea was for the guys in the shop could use, assembly configuration 01 dash whatever it would
So
be.
there's still some prep.
There will be a little bit, yeah, but it's prep that we already do before we even do the assembly drawing. So I mean, if we can eliminate that even further, we probably will, but for now, that's the step we're trying to take. I saw somebody that started to raise a hand.
Have you explored the model-based definition for?
No, we have not. It's an environment that we'd be happy to look at, though.
Yeah, and you mentioned about service manuals and maintenance manuals. How do you produce them? Do you use?
So currently our engineering team, the few that do work on those, which we have 2 senior engineers, that's their main product. They are working outside of that environment, which we are trying to pull them in. Right now, they make them manually in various Microsoft products, which will provide them with whatever screenshots they'll need or any other information that we can provide them with. But we're working on trying to move them into that environment too.
It's all those technical publications will pull the information.
Yeah, we've seen those, and that is actually, that's in a consideration too. That may be a development later. Oh, sorry. All right. Well, it was good talking to everybody, and I hope that we've possibly brought some ideas for things that you can do forward for your own group. And we're happy to be here, and we can't wait to come back next year and show you where we've gotten with that in that amount of time. But thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.